and arrested.
Mm-hmm.
We were asked to, okay, Miss Walters, would you maybe consider, you know, toning it down some, backing off,
Mm-hmm.
because we may taint a jury pool,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't want to have a change of venue, and we
Right.
really don't. We want people. He has a right to a fair, and
Yes.
a fair impartial jury.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
fair and impartial trial, and so we don't want to have so much trouble that we have to do a change of venue. Do you understand that? And I said yes. And Bernie, at that point, it made sense.
Yeah.
He's charged.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You're thinking the system's
the
working.
system's working.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the defense may ask for a deal,
Mm-hmm.
and we may have to consider that.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I had multiple conversations about that.
About that.
And
Mm-hmm.
he said, Cindy, he said, if he comes and he wants to do a plea, he said, I'll consider it.
Mm-hmm.
He said,
Mm-hmm.
I will consider it.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I would listen. And I was like, I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
and, at the very least, we expected them to come to us.
Right. But the defense never came, to your knowledge that you know of. The defense never came to the prosecution and said, let's work out a deal. And you were never notified by the DA's office of any kind of deal until the Monday of the day when basically the trial was going to start.
Correct. I guess the whole point that I'm trying to make is that the newly elected district attorney took office in January.
Mm-hmm.
With this case already had been on a docket for months,
mm-hmm.
and was set to go to trial many times in 2020, and would have gone if the pandemic would not have occurred.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And then he gets selected in January, and I personally go and meet with him.
Mm-hmm.
And wanted to put a face to a name.
Absolutely.
And, introduce myself and
I'm
let him
Bethany's mama.
I want you to know what I've been through.
Yes.
And what it took to get here and where we are. And, he got elected. I mean, he got sworn in January. I think we were set for trial maybe like April or May. Then it got pushed back to July.
Mm-hmm.
Then it got pushed back to December. And when it got pushed back to December, we were told, Ms. Walters, this date is pretty much in stone. We are not
like it's going to happen this time.
It's going to happen. And so,
you in your mind, you guys, it's going to trial.
It's going to
trial.
And I
mean, the jury has been sworn in now for December of 2021. I mean, this was happening.
It was happening. So we get to jury selection,
mm-hmm.
On the Wednesday and the Thursday, and there's about 120, maybe to 160 people there for jury selection. I would say between 120, 140, 50, 60 people there
mm-hmm.
for jury selection. And this is done in the Delta Grand Theater in Opelousas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we go through 2 days of what is voir dire,
mm-hmm.
jury selection.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I've never experienced before in my life. I've never seen done, and I watched it for 2 days. They went through 3 panels.
Mm-hmm.
They had 4. They went through 3 panels
mm-hmm.
to get 12 people and 2 alternates.
Mm-hmm.
Swore them in and paneled them, gave them instructions not to watch the news, not to get on social media, not to have conversation with each other. Just the instructions on what jurors,
mm-hmm.
their responsibilities of what they've sworn in to do,
mm-hmm.
and told to return Monday morning. They have dedicated parking.
Mm-hmm.
They have security that's going to make sure they get into the courthouse. And so we get there Monday morning, and the jury's in the basement, and we're sitting there, and
You're in, like, the courtroom.
I'm in the courtroom, and there's a lot of people in there.
Okay.
And I don't know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
I assume they play some role in this,
mm-hmm.
other than those officers that are in uniform. Like, they had the police officers from Livonia, so I figured, well, these people are from Livonia, the police officers, these must be the guys involved in a traffic stop that night. They're going to testify on what occurred there.
Right.
But there's other people in the courtroom,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know who they are. And we're sitting there. I get up, I go to the restroom. When I go to the restroom, I run into Mr. Chad Pete, and he good morning, Miss Walters, and he said, I'm going to be in there shortly, to talk to you and your husband. And I figured, well, okay,
Yeah.
you know,
Because you're figuring a trial is about to start.
right.
You
So
know.
I make my way back into the courtroom and I sit down, and you can tell there's some uneasiness. Things are not getting kicked off, and time's going on, and it's way after 9 o'clock, and nothing's happening. And then someone comes and ushers us out into a little bitty room on the back side of an office, like a conference room to an office in the courthouse.
Okay.
And I mean a very, very small room. And we walk in there, and the district attorney's in there, and an investigator, and two prosecutors, and one other man. I don't know what his role is. And the district attorney informs us that he made the decision to offer the defense a negligent homicide plea. So you're telling me that she didn't self-inflict, and you can prove that she didn't shoot herself, but you can't prove the intent. So you're going to offer him a plea?
And an offered plea.
That was not disclosed in that room.
So in that meeting, they did not disclose the fact that it was an offered plea.
It was not. I was not aware that it was an offered plea until I went back to the courthouse the next day and got the minutes from the proceedings. And then I was aware that it was an offered plea.
And in that little tiny meeting room, the DA said to you, this is what we've decided to do.
This is what I've decided.
I've decided. He used the word I've decided. So you and your husband were never consulted on any of it?
No.
Wow.
We were not consulted. We were informed.
You were informed, not consulted. You have questions, concerns.
Although he said he understood our reasoning for wanting to let it go to jury, he said he had a moral and ethical obligation to not try this case.
What? For why? What reason?
Because he couldn't prove the intent.
But, okay, so, all right. So at that particular point, you then find out at what point that the man, Michael Guillory, is going to get this plea and the plea deal, and it's time served. What happened with that?
Yeah, he's given credit for time served.
He was given credit for time served.
He will be given credit for time served.
Okay, so what does that mean? Is he going to be free? What do we know?
It means that the Department of Corrections is going to calculate his time, and they're going to determine how much time he has left. He was charged in July of 19, so he's been serving time since July of 19, so he'll be given credit for that time served, and then the rest of his time will be calculated,
And what kind of, so with the plea deal, what kind of sentence is it? No sentence? No additional months? Just time served on the original charge itself?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Time served on my understanding is time served on the original charge. Because he was charged in July of 19. So he's been serving, that time. So he'll be given credit for that.
Do you have any idea when he'll be out of jail?
I don't have a release date, but, in my mind, maybe a year and a half,
Is it true that there was one of the experts that was actually getting off of a plane?
Yes.
That Monday?
I was made aware that the district attorney had the parish had actually paid for the expert to fly in, and he had flown in from Atlanta and had actually landed at the airport in Lafayette and was getting off the plane, and the parish actually had someone there to pick him up
to bring him to the courthouse because he was slated to testify.
Correct. That was the day he was going to testify.
Mm-hmm.
And he was basically told to get back on the plane and go back to Atlanta. His services were no longer needed.
So your question has always been, why the plea deal? Why the plea deal at that time? And Chad Pete referenced intent.
Basically,
what do you wish would have happened with
all
of
of this?
Mr.
Pete told me that he had a moral and ethical obligation not to take someone to trial whom he could not convict. That's what I was told. He had a moral and ethical obligation not to take someone to trial who he could not convict.
But, the thing of it is, with that, you had your jurors. They were ready to go. Why not just let it go? Why not? And if he didn't have enough information in December 2021, did he not know that in January?
That's my question. Bingo. You understand why I am here today, Bernadette. That is the question in my mind. You took office in January. This was going to trial in May. It was going to trial in July. And here we are, December. And on commencement of trial, after voir dire, you are going to decide you don't have it?
Why would he not have told you that all these many months, or someone on the staff these many months?
It goes back to what I said, Bernie. All these excuses are meaningless to my husband and I. He's been in charge of this case for a year. And to think that I actually thought, there couldn't be any public agent or agency that performed worse than the Sheriff's Department and the coroner of St. Landry Parish. And to have this happen, the coroner, I don't know if this is the correct word or not, but, the coroner, I got my daughter's death certificate third party and never laid eyes on the coroner of St. Landry Parish until 3 years later.
And at that point,
I had subpoenaed him. I had subpoenaed Dr. Russell Pavage for a deposition. He refused to see me for 3 years. Once he was subpoenaed, he charged me $750 an hour for that deposition. My check was written for $1,500 for the parish coroner to see me.
Had you tried repeatedly to see
him? Repeatedly to see him. And even as a courtesy to meet me and offer condolences and say, Miss Walters, I can't discuss this, but at least meet me, Bernie. At least offer me, you are a public servant and the coroner of all people. At least allow me into your office, meet me and talk to me and lie to me if you have to. But, and I say that, I don't want you to lie to me, but even if you don't mean the condolences or even,
give me some sort of expression of dignity.
But you force me to subpoena you and charge me $750 an hour to see me.
Had you not talked to the first expert or excuse me, not asked to hire the first expert at your own expense, what do you think would have happened?
Nothing.
And it would have just been left in this situation all this time.
If I had not pursued this, diligently pursued it, due diligence, search out these experts, make sure they're reputable, make sure that they've been involved in court cases before, they've done this. This is not a Johnny-come-lately expert. I want to know what kind of education they have, what's their background, where they've been, what they've done, and thoroughly did some due diligence on these people before they were just hired. Okay? And we wouldn't have done this. That man would still not have, he wouldn't have even given an offered plea.
Mm-hmm.
There would have been no evidence for him to have to do that. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am. At this point, what do you want from Mr. Pete? Did you get a good enough explanation other than the brief explanation that you received?
Bernie, we were so shocked that this
Mm-hmm.
was occurring. We were ushered into a room,
Mm-hmm.
informed that this was going to happen, and it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And you're so shocked that this is occurring, you can't even formulate a reasonable or rational thought at the moment.
And where was Michael Guillory while all of this was occurring? Because wasn't there another situation? Were they not bringing him to the courthouse for this proceeding?
It was not the morning of the commencement of trial. Let's back this up to the first day of jury selection, which was the Wednesday before.
Okay.
Okay. So the Wednesday before, the Wednesday and the Thursday, the trial was going to start on the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at maybe the 9th and the 10th of December, maybe somewhere's around there. I think jury selection was the 9th and the 10th, or the 8th and the 9th. Actually, it was the 8th and the 9th. Because the 8th was my mother's birthday.
Wow.
The 8th and the 9th was a Wednesday and a Thursday. And all the jurors were signed in, and they had gone to the little information desk and given their names and
Mm-hmm.
driver's license and demographics and whatnot, and gotten their number, their juror number.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the numbers were put into the computer, and the computer generated the panels. And so we're waiting on them to bring Mr. Guillory to jury selection because he has the right to be there.
Correct.
Okay. And so there's some delay in that. And quite a bit of delay is occurring there as well. And so then all of a sudden we notice added security. The Opelousas Police Department, the St. Lady Parish Sheriff's Department, there's just all of a sudden added security in the Delta Grand. And the victim's advocate comes to me and whispers in my ear that there's going to be a delay. And that while he was dressing for jury selection, a shank fell out of his person.
A shank fell out of Michael Guillory's person.
Correct.
Wow.
And so they were going to be taking him to the hospital to have him imaged, x-rayed, to make sure that there was
no other hidden items.
Correct. So we knew what had occurred, but the potential jurors in that room did not know. And so they were growing very antsy.
Mm-hmm.
They were aggravated. They had been there since 8 o'clock, and it's 11 o'clock.
Wow.
And so there was quite some delay with that.
As you look back on all of this, at this point, what do you want? What questions do you want answered? And what do you want to say?
You know, at this point, Bernie, that's over with. You know, he's never going to serve time in her death. You know, they're going to say, yeah, they've got a conviction. You know, they've got a guilty plea.
Right.
You know,
they've got the guilty plea. They got their deal.
And Ms. Walters, he is serving time.
Right. It is serving time. But had they had a trial and maybe he had been proven guilty.
Had they had a trial, and even, Bernie, if that jury would have said he was not guilty, then the St. Landry Parish Sheriff's Department, the district attorney, and the coroner's office would have done their job that day.
Right.
And we'd have all gone home.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd have been done. And it's done now. It's over.
Right.
You know.
But your lingering questions and frustrations are not.
You're going to always wonder, what if?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Why not let it go to trial?
This all started initially, you know, like I said, it was a search for truth. It was a search for the truth. And I look back, and had it been my son, would I have advocated as hard as I did? Yes, The answer is yes, because I would have wanted the cloud of doubt removed off of him. I
Mm-hmm.
would not have wanted that X and that stigma on him.
Right.
So I would have fought just as hard
Mm-hmm.
on the other side of the fence.
Right. Right. If
Okay?
your child
If
had been Michael.
either way, if
Right.
Michael
Either
would have
way.
been my son,
Mm-hmm.
I would have fought to remove the cloud of doubt off of him.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always to find out the truth. Am I grieving a suicide, or did a homicide actually occur?
And do you question? I mean, to you, has justice been served?
No, justice has not been served. It has not been served, because a jury should have decided this. Mr. Chad Pete took this out of the hands of a jury on the morning of trial.
And based on the charge, could he not have received a sentence of up to 40 years?
Yes, the jury, the burden of proof is on the state. We
Correct.
understood, did the district attorney tell us that this was a hard case? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Did they inform us that there's no guarantees? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Did they tell us that, there's a possibility that the jury could be hung? There's a possibility that he could be found not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
There's a possibility they could come back with a lesser charge. We were informed of all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and we knew that it wasn't an open and shut case.
Right.
There's no cases that are open and shut.
Mm-hmm.
And there are attorneys that walk into cases that think that it's a slam dunk and they lose them.
Mm-hmm.
And the exact opposite happens. They walk in and they know that they might not have a shot at all of winning, but they're going to try it,
Mm-hmm.
and they end up winning it. Those are things you never know. That's why it's a jury of 12 people that don't have a horse in the race,
Right.
that are going to listen to this and then make a decision. But as the district attorney, is it a possibility that you could have a hung jury? Absolutely. Is it a possibility that you could have a not guilty verdict? Absolutely. Are you going to win them all? No.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's over with. So now the mission is to advocate that this never happens to anybody else. And
to
that,
not another victim's
to
family.
not another, don't ever underestimate,
Mm-hmm.
don't ever underestimate a mother that wants to know.
Yeah. What do you want to know from Mr. Pete in terms of, and do you know?
I want him to justify his actions.
Mm-hmm.
I want him to justify that decision. Don't give me rhetoric. Don't give me what you think I want to hear. Don't give the public what you think they want to hear.
Do you think his
legally,
motive, mm-hmm.
legally?
What do you think his motive was? Was it just about a guilty plea and in the win column?
I don't know what his motive was.
Okay.
But it leads me to believe that on the morning of commencement of a trial, that there's either incompetency or corruption, or maybe some of both.
So you do worry about that?
You expect me to believe that this was a competent decision made on the morning of trial? To me, that could have been made way before. You didn't flew in an expert that has already landed in Lafayette. You had all intentions of trying this. What happened?
What happened is the question. What did happen?
You
and
wake
why?
up between Thursday and Monday
Mm-hmm.
and make this decision?
And if something did change, would you have wanted a different kind of encounter with him, a different meeting to explain, or at least
he was
discuss
under the
it?
gun. I mean, he had to make a decision. Everybody was. If he was going to make that decision, it had to be done at that point. It was either go on with the trial, but this is the deal. If he would have told his assistant district attorney to get back in there and try that case, that ADA would have had no choice but to go back in there and try that case. Because he's just a soldier.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You're the one calling the shots, Mr. Pete.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use a scapegoat. Don't use anybody else. Because you and you alone are responsible for this decision.
No one knows what the outcome will be, right? And whether or not you'll have other communication with Mr. Pete. I know you are currently seeking a meeting with him. Do you think you'll be able to get a better resolution or a discussion to your satisfaction of why the decision was made for the guilty plea and at what time it was made and that it was an offered plea? Do you think you'll get
Those are
answers?
very important points that you bring out. Number one, the timing.
Mm-hmm.
The timing of this is just, I can't even comprehend that.
Mm-hmm.
That you didn't know this before that day? You never led the family to believe those were your intentions. What did you lead the family to believe? That it was a hard case, that, it wasn't going to be easy. There was, the jury was going to have to try to connect the dots. We weren't going to be able to connect it.
Mm-hmm. It was going to be a tough case.
It was going to be a tough case.
Yes,
but you tried tough cases all the time.
That's right.
And
you guys were prepared for that.
Easy? Do you have an easy case? Because your easy case may be the one that you actually lose. Did we know that it was not an easy case? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You guys were prepared for that. You understood that.
We understood that.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody knew that case, it was me.
Mm-hmm.
Did I know how they were going to argue it? And no, you never know that because the prosecutor told me it's a moving target in a courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's moving. They always
and
strategize.
That makes sense, right?
It's a moving target. So, Miss Walters, I have 3 or 4 boxes right here of stuff. Okay, now I might use everything that's in that box. I might use only one box. I might use things I didn't even think I was going to use, and I might not use some things that I thought I was going to use. I never know what it's constantly moving in a strategy the whole time a trial is going on. Okay, and you're gauging the body. They're skilled and crafted, and that's their area of expertise to watch that jury, read the body language on the jury, see if they can get a feel, if they're connecting with that jury, if they're hitting home, and if during break they feel like, we're not connecting, they're not getting it, we're not doing well, we may want to go to the defense and offer a plea. Or you have the defense come to you and say, we're willing to take a plea. Can you take this to the family? We didn't even get that option. But the jury could have come back with a lesser charge than second. A jury could have gotten to negligent homicide on their own. Perhaps, maybe, but we'll never know. But it would have been better for them to have come to that conclusion than what the district attorney, Chad Pete, did Monday morning. It would have been better to get a not guilty. It would have been better to have a hung jury. It would have been better to receive. We were prepared as a family to receive anything that came from that jury. What we were not prepared for was what we got from Mr. Chad Pete.
And at the end of the day, you will always mourn your Bethany.
The next day, Bernie, you go home and there was just utter silence in my home. The silence spoke volumes to us. It was like she had died all over again in our home. No one was saying a word. We were just stunned. Just like when we found out it had occurred. So it was so quiet in our home. The next day, I got up and what should I be doing today? I have the whole week off of work because
you thought there was going to be a trial.
I should be at the St. Landry Parish Courthouse today. What do I do with myself? So about 1 o'clock, I decided to get dressed. And I went for a ride, and I said, I'm going to go get the minutes from yesterday. So I drove to the courthouse, parked, got down, went in. And before I went to the clerk's office, I just went into the courtroom where the trial would have been occurring. And there was some proceeding unrelated to us going on. And I just slipped in the back quietly and just sat there. And the tears just uncontrollably, they just fell. And I was there for quite some time. Noise was going on, chatter. But for me to tell you what was being said and what was happening, I was just zoned out. And then eventually, someone noticed me. And they came to me and they said, and it was a victim's advocate, and said, well, Miss Walters, what are you doing here? And the first thing that came to my mind was, the day after we buried her, we went to the cemetery. And it's what most families do. You go back to the cemetery to mourn the loss. And I looked at her and I said, I'm here mourning what should be occurring here today.
Because you felt like Bethany didn't get her justice.
Over again.
Because y'all didn't get the trial.
We didn't get the trial, And did I need a show put on for me to know what happened? Did I need a dramatization and everybody getting their little places on the stage and let's begin is that is that what maybe people would want to perceive, that I had to have a trial to tell me what occurred? No, I didn't need a trial to tell me what occurred. I already knew what occurred. I knew that she had not self-inflicted.
Yeah.
That much I knew. Okay. Now, the rest of it,
Don't you as a mother, you want to fill in those blanks? Do you think you'll ever get answers to that? I mean, honestly. No. Michael Gilry never did tell the truth from day one. When he was arrested in Livonia, he gave a false name. When he was questioned, it was not his house, it was her house. It was not his weapon, it was her weapon. There was never any element of truth. I was privileged to watch the interrogation videos, and it was like chasing a rabbit down a dark hole. Nothing ever connected, nothing ever made sense. It was never a true picture of what actually occurred. Did he ever even say that they had argued that day, or that they were fighting or had been fighting? Drugs? I mean...
Yes, drugs. The house had been shot up, Bernie. One of the things that the people, now I can disclose a lot of things. That house had been shot up, Now, was it shot up that day? Was it shot up the days before?
Yeah, nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Yeah. But, there was projectiles in the wall, in the floors, all over the house. The weapon was stolen out of New Iberia.
And do we know if Michael Guillory had stolen that weapon, or we don't necessarily know that?
We do not know that. The only thing that we do know is that he is from New Iberia.
And he was in possession of that weapon the day your daughter died.
Correct. And see, Mr. Guillory's mom and dad adopted 3 children from Wednesday's child with Maria Placer and Blue Rolfus back in the day. Mr. and Mrs. Guillory never had any biological children. They adopted 3 children from Wednesday's child, Michael being one of them, he and his brother. And they were from the New Iberia area. Their biological family is from New Iberia. And Michael had been living in New Iberia prior to
going back to where his adoptive mother and father lived, and they let him live in that property that was across the street.
Correct. There's so many pieces to this, that had a jury been able to hear what evidence was there and to at least hear the experts. And for me to find out that only one of the experts was ever consulted, even talked to, prior to Monday morning,
so
and no pretrial.
One out of 3 experts, only one out of the 3 experts was contacted before the day of the trial.
And the one that was contacted and spoken to by phone was the firearms expert. They actually had Zoom meetings.
Yes.
During the pandemic.
Okay.
But Mr. Gardner was the one flown in.
From Atlanta.
And the local expert here in Lafayette that was available to speak to them anytime and actually go and meet with them was never contacted.
about your daughter's case. Yet you walk in and a plea is on. He goes with this plea because of the statement that he said to you. He said he had a duty.
He had a duty. He had a duty, and
So you feel that this
my
is
my
justice denied.
my concern is, so he had a duty, and and
Do you feel like he had a duty to your daughter and that a duty to something else came first? And if so, what came first instead of your daughter and getting justice for her
I
in
don't
your
know.
mind?
I don't know why Chad Pete, chose to engage in this manner.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my suspicions, but I don't know them for sure,
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that you just wake up and make this decision. I think something occurred between Thursday and Monday, because all indications prior to that, even up until Monday morning, you had intentions of trying this case. You flew an expert in.
Yeah, and the
So
expert had landed in
it
Lafayette.
goes back to me telling me all of your excuses are meaningless to me.
Mm-hmm.
Meaningless. They mean nothing. Your ethical obligation, I have a lot of trouble believing that, because if you had a moral and ethical obligation, then
And
your
that's what he
moral,
told
that's
you.
correct, then your moral and ethical obligation is even greater than that. You should have never even forced that defendant to take a plea, Mr. Pete.
Cindy, at this point, where does life go from this point?
It goes to reform. It
Mm-hmm.
goes to justice reform. It goes to sounding the alarm, telling the story, putting the spotlight on what occurred, and making sure that no other family that doesn't have the means or the education to expose something like this, to become a voice for them.
So you're worried that justice will be denied for others wherever. And so you would wish to advocate.
Worried for others, yes, for all people. But the fact that St. Landry Parish is a very dark parish, I intend on turning the light on there.
As we are recording this, this is December the 21st. Where has your husband been?
My husband has been in front of the St. Landry Parish District Attorney's Office and in front of the St. Landry Parish District Court, standing there with a sign and informing people of what occurred.
I know none of us knows what the future holds for us. You have been very clear that obviously reform is one of the big things for you, but personally for you as a mother, for your other child, for Mr. Walters.
Bernie, for when we talk about my husband Doug, and um, protesting and being here today with you is definitely not our nature or our character or who we are or who we even want to be. But we have been, I don't know what's the correct terminology, to propelled into this, placed into this, finding ourselves here. No one wants to find themselves here. No
Mm-hmm.
one wants these shoes on. To have him there doing that. I got called from the police department asking me to come down there and to
Like
maybe,
from the St. Landry Sheriff's Office?
well, actually from the Opelousas Police Department,
Opelousas
because
Police.
it's in the city.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Forgive me.
Maybe to come and redirect him, or to come and bring him home, or come and talk to him. And I thought about that, and I said, am I embarrassed or am I ashamed? No. Am I humiliated by him standing out there? No. Does he have every right to be out there? Absolutely. Should he use a different method? To some, maybe. Um, but I'm not coming out there. I'm not redirecting him. I'm not changing his mind. Um, I'm not doing any of that.
Mm-hmm.
If this helps him, if this is how he's going to process what happened to him, then Mr. Pete, you're just going to have to look at him standing out there.
Mm-hmm.
For 22 days, you're going to have to look at him standing out there because he's going to stand out there one day for every day she was alive on this earth. Rain, snow, sleet, or shine, he's going to be there.
As we are wrapping up, Miss Cindy, what do you want people to remember about Bethany? She's a beautiful woman, absolutely beautiful. I can see you and Mr. Walters in her. She's just beautiful. But what do you want people to remember about Bethany?
That, her dad sent me this, and he, and when I think about it and when I ponder it, he says, Cindy, someone once told me, this is what he told me, this is what my husband told me. Someone once told me that the greatest hell a human can experience here on earth is not suffering. And I said, really, Doug? The greatest hell a human can experience here on earth is not suffering? He said, no, it's feeling like it's pointless and it's never going to get any better. And, if I could talk to her today and I could tell her anything, it would be to tell her that it's going to get better, Bethany, and Mom and Dad are going to make sure that it gets better for you and for all others.
Cindy, I want to thank you for talking to me, sharing so much of yourself, the lives of your family, and everything that you've gone through with this situation. Thank you for spending the time with me.
Thank you for having me, Bernie. Just to be able to freely express at this point and not to have to tiptoe through the tulips or to try to be politically correct and try to tone it down and try to have some professionalism about yourself and
Mm-hmm.
not lose your mind. Uh, you just don't know how you are going to behave in a situation until you're thrust into it. And what is totally out of character for you,
Mm-hmm.
sitting here today, and having to call someone out and to shed light on a situation like this. Um, if it wasn't so personal, if it hadn't happened to me, then I don't know that I would join a cause, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and put myself out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have no choice but to put myself out there now. Am I going to be stereotyped and thought of as a mother that just couldn't come to grips with the death of her child? No, I'm beyond that. I'm beyond that. I needed to know once I found out what happened and that she didn't self-inflict, then I had a expectation on the parish to do something about it. And they may feel like they did something about it. But what they did certainly wasn't expected and can't be called justice.